Today I'm going to share with you how I make my sourdough bread, and this recipe usually takes about 8 hours to make from start to finish. This is not my recipe. I did get it off of TikTok and it's worked really well for me, so hopefully you enjoy and it'll work well for you. As always, be sure to leave any comments down below. So we're going to go ahead and get started. You're going to start with active starter and you're going to add 250 grams of active starter to a bowl. Once you have that in and measured, I use a little scale to make sure that I get exact measurements. Then you're going to add 725 grams of warm water. You want to make sure that it's nice and warm because it'll make the starter activate more quickly than as if you use room temperature water. So you'll see I'll zero out the scale, then I'll go ahead and add the more water. Once the water is added, then you're going to mix it. You don't have to necessarily use the tool that I'm using. I just find it helps. And you want to make sure that you get most of the clumps of the starter incorporated into that water. It doesn't need to be completely all stirred in, but you want to make sure that it's fairly smooth and you don't have too many lumps in it. Then you're going to add 25 grams of salt. And then I like to add bread flour. You can use whatever type of flour you want. I typically find that the bread flour does help it rise quicker. That might not be the case for everyone, but for me, that's what I found. So I use bread flour when I'm adding my flour. Once you have all of your flour mixed in, you're just going to hand stir it. Your main goal right now is to try to get all the flour incorporated and try to make sure it's not very clumpy. You want to make sure you get most of the flour clumps out and to where it starts to look somewhat like a bread dough. Once you get the desired consistency of it, you're going to let it sit on the counter for 1 hour, and then we will begin our stretch and folds. Now that it's sat on the counter for an hour, we're going to begin our stretch and folds. So I like to do 4 sets of stretch and folds every 30 minutes. And when I'm stretching it, I like to do 10 stretches each time. And you're going to notice after each time you let it sit, when you come back to do the next set of stretch and folds, it's going to be a little bit tougher and form more of that dough consistency that you're looking for. You can't really go wrong with how you stretch the dough. The main thing is you want to really pull it so that way you get those gluten strands to activate. Towards the end, you'll see it gets pretty stiff, so I almost have to jiggle it just to get it to stretch out of there and get those folds in. Once you've done your last stretch and folds, you're going to let it sit on the counter for 2 hours. After 2 hours, it's time to begin to get them out and start shaping them. This recipe calls to make 2 large loaves, but I'm going to make 3 out of it. So I'm going to start by dividing the dough into 3 somewhat equal parts. This is not perfect, but if this was selling this, I'd make them more even. I make my loaves by creating a rectangle shape, and then I fold it into 3 sections. And the main important part of shaping is what I'm doing now, is you're basically going to pull the dough towards you and push out at the same time. And what you're doing is creating surface tension, and you'll start to notice on the top of the loaves, the bubbles are a great indication that you are shaping your loaves well. Once you've shaped the loaves, you're going to let it sit on the counter uncovered for 20 minutes, and then you'll come back and reshape them. When you are reshaping, you're going to do the same exact steps. The only difference is that the dough is going to be a little bit tougher this time, so you're going to want to be a little bit more gentle when you're shaping. After you've shaped it the second time, that is when I go ahead and put it in a bowl that is either lined with a kitchen towel, or you can put it in the batons, whatever. If you don't have them on hand, I just put it in a bowl that's wrapped with a kitchen towel. I'm using chocolate chips in this inclusion, so I will do this on the second shape, but depending on what type of inclusion you use, sometimes I will put it in when I'm shaping it the first step. But either way, it all turns out well. You just want to make sure that it's fully incorporated in your dough and it's through all of your layers. Then you're going to put them in the fridge for about 2 hours. Once they've been in the fridge for 2 hours, I like to take them out. While the oven is preheating, I'll go ahead and put them into whatever pans I'm going to bake them in, and I let them get to room temperature. I do preheat the oven to 500 degrees. Once the oven is preheated and I've scored all of the loaves, I put them in covered for 35 minutes, and then I will take the lid off and cook them for an additional 25 minutes at 425 degrees. I switch between using Dutch ovens and loaf pans. Whichever one you choose works well and it tastes delicious.